Hey everybody, I'm John and this is Blind Whiskey Reviews. Hey everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today here on Blind Whiskey Reviews, the most honest reviews on YouTube. As always, if you haven't already, don't forget, hit that subscribe button down below so you know every time I'm putting out a new review and every time I'm starting a live stream. Today we're going to be reviewing the Jim Beam Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. This is their standard white label product, although this packaging is a commemorative packaging, but still the white label product. And this brings up the topic of budget whiskeys. And I want to know, leave a comment down below, what is your favorite budget whiskey? This whiskey comes in at right about $10. So what is your favorite whiskey that you can find maybe in that like up to $15 range? What's your favorites? I'd love to hear them. So leave that comment down below. And without further ado, let's jump back in time and get to the review. All right, everybody, let's get into the whiskey. As always, the color. I should probably stop saying let's get into the whiskey because on occasion it's rum and I just sound like an idiot, but I guess I'll keep with it. This one is kind of a deep golden color. Doesn't have the deepness of like an amber, but it's definitely got a golden hue to it. On the nose, we got a little bit of deep fruit. I feel like I'm getting a couple of like spicy characters in there perhaps. Maybe like a woody note on there, which I don't get a ton of wood on the nose in these whiskeys, so that's an interesting note. The deep fruit reminds me of something too. It reminds me... this is lighter as well. The deep fruit kind of reminds me of maybe like Angel's Envy, where it's got like a finish on it. Port finish. I don't know if this has that, but it has a nose that kind of reminds me of that, so I'm intrigued. Let's get into the taste. Cheers. Definitely going to need to go on for another sip of this one. It's got a very interesting character to it. I was hit with a little bit of fruitiness up front, and then very quickly that changed into a kind of like a spicy, a little bit slightly sweet, kind of spicy character toward the back of the palate. This is incredibly light though. I'm getting little to no burn from it. Let me get another sip here. I feel like I'm picking up some woody notes in here. There's definitely some bitterness in the back end. There's kind of like a little residual burn, some spice character. I feel like we've got maybe a bit of rye. Maybe this is a rye, or it's maybe a relatively high rye bourbon. Definitely got those light fruits on the nose still, vanilla, some deeper fruits underlying there. I'm kind of losing that sense of a finish on it that I really got when I first started nosing it. I'm not an expert on finishes, especially when it comes to wine finishes, so I don't know what those all do to the whiskey necessarily every time, but this one's definitely intriguing. Got some bitter notes to it, woody notes, some sweeter, very mild, like of the brown sugar and caramel type notes. Very, like I mentioned before, up front there's some fruit and that quickly turns into these other like slightly sweet bitter characters, the spicy characters. You're left with some lingering bitterness on the palate. Let's throw a couple drops of water in it and see where that takes us. For proof, I mean, this really doesn't feel like it's much above 85, like those the mid 80 range. It's very, very light. Little to no burn on the palate. No burn going down the chest. So, all right. On the nose, it kind of ramped back up that character that I kind of felt like was that similar character that I smelled like Angel's Envy, and it's got that finish to it, those deep fruits. Still smelling the woody notes. Yeah, it didn't do much. Didn't take away from it too much. It was light. It didn't feel like it lightened it up too much. I also have a hefty pour of whiskey in this glass, so that little bit of water might not have affected it too much in terms of how you perceive the proof on the palate. But for a rating, this one's good. It's not super complex. There's a few flavor notes on the palate. It's a little unbalanced when it comes to the way that those notes hit your palate. Like I said, the fruit is on your palate real quick and kind of quickly disappears in these more bitter characters. Not bad. I don't get the sense that there's a ton of age on it, based on the color and based on, I mean, it does have some woody notes to it, but I just don't feel like it's older. And maybe the reason it feels so smooth on the palate, maybe it does have a little bit of age on it, but who knows? I mean, if I'm guessing, we're in that 6 to 7 year ballpark, perhaps, maybe 5, you know? So who knows? I'm going to say this is I think it's good. I think it's drinkable. Nothing wrong with it. It's not knocking my socks off, so I'm going to say it's a 78. It's good whiskey. This is Jim Beam. Surprised I didn't pick up that it was Beam, because normally I feel like Beam has a pretty distinct character. But let's go grab that bottle and we'll talk about it a little bit more. All right, we just finished our review of Jim Beam White Label. This is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey bottled at an amazing 80 proof. So we definitely picked that up when we were doing the review. I hate stuff when it's bottled at 80 proof. And to be honest with you, as I'm thinking about this whiskey, I don't know why I gave it as high of a score as I did. I would have probably knocked it down a few points because it's so light on the palate, so mild. It doesn't, I was actually slightly impressed with the way this came across. It did have a little bit more flavor than I thought. As I said, I think it was about 85, mid 80 proof, so 85-ish. So it did come across with, like, it felt like it had a decent amount of flavor, although it was extremely light on the palate. I'm surprised I didn't pick it up that it was Jim Beam. I usually feel like Jim Beam has a very distinct flavor, which didn't really come across to me in this. And it had that character that I don't recall ever tasting in Jim Beam, where I was kind of mentioning, like, it almost reminded me of like Angel's Envy, where it had this like weird fruity kind of finished, like wine finish character to it. Although that kind of went away as we kind of went through the whiskey a little bit. So maybe that was just kind of something that's going to go away as the whiskey airs out a touch. But I am actually impressed that it had as much flavor as it did. Like I said, I'm not normally a fan of white label, but for something that comes in at a price like this of $10, this bottle was $9.99, you really can't complain. I mean, if they would knock the proof up a few points, I think it'd be a really solid whiskey. And it'd be, you know, the problem with having a whiskey even like this is I don't necessarily want to drink it neat. It's not a supremely amazing tasting, but you know, it is what it is. It's not great for a mixer necessarily, though, because it just doesn't have enough flavor to kind of compete with anything you're mixing it with. So that makes it a little bit tough to kind of put a place on it. But I definitely think it's a solid, drinkable whiskey. And for $10, there's just no way you can go wrong. So I'd love to hear what your guys' opinion of the Jim Beam White Label is. And like I mentioned earlier in the review at the beginning, let me know what your favorite budget whiskey is. You know, there's a lot of people who are big fans of Beam. A lot of people are big fans of Wild Turkey. I think tends to be a little bit above that $15 range, but I've found it at $15 before. Wild Turkey 101, or even like Fighting Cock from Heaven Hill. That's a pretty popular budget whiskey. So let me know what your favorite budget whiskey is down below. As always, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. You can find me at Instagram and Twitter at blind_reviews. You can give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and you can send me an email at blindwhiskyreviews, that's whiskey with an E, @gmail.com. And until next time, cheers.